Joe here for Ashdown. I'm here today with Biffy Clyro bass extraordinaire, James Johnston. James, thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here. We're going to talk about some amps.
We're going to talk about some amps, yes, because we're here today because we're going to be filming, we're filming like a new video for our Ashdown studio range.
Brilliant.
Which is these little combo things, which you kindly come down to play some bass later on, which we're going to do. But I kind of wanted to take this opportunity to talk to you about your gear entire, because I think you've had quite an interesting like development in all your in your bass tone and the equipment that you've used. I'm not just going to talk about like Ashdown amps and stuff. I kind of want to talk about.
I've been round to houses. There's been a few amps over the years, some that have lived and died, but it's always that quest, always that search for trying to get the tone that you hear in your head. Not always the easiest thing, and it sometimes takes a little bit of searching, but the journey is the exciting bit, really.
You've actually kind of already started answering a question I was going to ask, kind of as the culmination of this, but let's start with that. Like, is there a tone that you have always strived for, or do you feel that's been an evolution for you?
I think it's been an evolution. It's evolved as the sound of the band has changed, what we've been trying to achieve as a band. I think the sound, I'm always looking for different sounds, you know. Sometimes it wants to be a nice, smooth, round tone. I'm playing with my fingers. Sometimes I want a bit more of a punkier edge, a bit more face to it. And I think it's important to be able to get that from one amp. And I think that's why there's always the search to just discover how to get the best out of an amplifier. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time. You know, there have been amps that I've had in the past that I've struggled with, and it's not been until years later that I've gone back and just realised maybe it was me, maybe I wasn't using it properly. You know, I just hadn't quite dialed in the right tone. But I think I'm looking for quite a versatile tone, is how I'd put it. Looking for different things just to match different songs, really.
Right, because I guess you've had quite a progression there. Even if we just look at the Ashdown amps that you've played, I think I think you started off using like ABM 900s, the old sort of larger frame ABM series.
I'm tempted to say 300s.
Really? Right. Okay.
The little baby one.
Right,
I'm sure that was the first one I had in early 2000s, when we were on the toilet circuit in the UK.
The famous toilet circuit.
Playing all those little venues. And I guess that was really when I fell in love with the tone from Ashdown. The ability to hit that sub button in those little rooms was something that was really, really great as well. And I've been through different Ashdown amps over the years as well, but that was really when the kind of the relationship started, and when I fell in love with the gear, to be honest.
Yeah, that's something I really love about the ABMs, the fact that you have the compressor, the valve drive, and the sub. I know it's unusual and almost not something you see on a lot of modern amps to have kind of those sort of extra features. You might think that that's almost something you'll replace with things on the floor, but they're actually incredibly useful, versatile controls. I realise that I'm just plugging Ashdown right now. But
I mean, you know, we're talking about amps, so it sometimes you might do a little bit of plugging, but you know, we play sweaty club shows. We play big sort of outdoor festival shows. We play little acoustic radio shows where it's set up similar to this, and I think that's where the versatility comes into it for me. I'm not just looking for one thing from an amplifier, and maybe that's why there's been a bit of searching and a bit of a journey over the years, just trying to find a different amps for different jobs, I suppose.
Yeah, I've always thought that like the ABM's great at that, because you can, you know, shut down that valve drive and you get a great clean amp because you've got that solid state power section. But you know, the valve drive means that you can get that's kind of grittier, more valvey tone.
It's the face. The face is the expression I always use in the studio. You want it to be cut like glass. You really want to get that. If you're playing with as I do, with a loud rock drummer, and somebody who's got a huge guitar tone, you need something that's going to have a bit of nose and something that's going to cut through.
Well, you've got to fill out those fundamentals as well.
You still got to have that basis. You've got to, if you're building a house, you still need to have the foundations to build everything on top of. So, you know, you're asking quite a lot of your amplifier, you know.
Yeah, sure.
And you know, it's nice to have something you can rely on.
But you moved on to the CTM series, our big sort of two-man lifter valve amps for a little bit. You've come back onto ABM 600s now, I think is your...
That's right, we went onto the CTMs. We had the Little Bastards?
Yeah, I remember seeing this on stage, a Little Bastard 30, the
That's
LB30,
right.
which is like a recording amp, you know, sort of, and you had that on the side of stadium stage.
That was on big shows as well. It wasn't the little club shows, it was on a big old stage. It was just the tone of it and the simplicity of it.
So were you just diming it? Were you using it for a drive tone, or were you actually using it just quietly as like a...
It was, I think by that point we'd probably moved on to in-ears, which kind of changes the whole game. The thought process there is trying to reduce the volume on stage to give a little bit more control at the front of house. So if I'm singing down my microphone, you're not getting lots of bass down there. So at various times over the years, we've moved into like off-stage cabs or an ISO cab or just flipped something around, made it point to the back. So the requirement to get lots of volume on stage is reduced. So I think that's why you can get away with using a smaller head, really. With a DI and with miking up and that sort of thing. So we found that our volume on stage was getting so loud, it was just getting ridiculous. And what's sort of the point in having in-ears, about 1 million speakers behind you blaring it out, and you can't hear it anyway, you know? So it's about having control. If you totally lose the volume on stage, you lose a bit of vibe. Yeah. You just lose that energy. You want to feel it in your chest. You want to feel it pushing you from behind. Right. So inevitably, we got a really quiet stage and we've slowly built it back up to being 140 decibels again.
Was the quiet stage kind of a reason behind moving back to ABMs from CTMs? Did you find those big valve amps kind of, because where they're at home, where a 300 watt valve amp is at home, is loud?
That's right. I think it's like many things in life when you, or certainly for us when we go to make a new album, we try to come up with new sounds. We try not to repeat ourselves with the things that we've done before. So you've created this new tone in the studio. And then when you come to play live, you want to represent that new tone. But we still play all the songs from the first record and from all the way through our career. So it becomes a little bit of a conundrum of how to approach that when it comes to a new tour. So you've kind of got one eye on the new tone that you've created. You still want to keep one foot in the past, if you like, in terms of representing that tone. So inevitably, you just change things. You just kind of want to rip up your rig and start again and kind of go all the way. So we've ended up now, last year we built a new touring rig, which we've not had a chance to use. But we've gone back to the 600s, to the ABM 600s, which is, although it's a little bit larger, it's back to the similar tone I had in 2003. You know, and it's funny how you just go around to houses and come back to a really simple setup, and we're just taking a DI out of the front of the head, a mic on the cab. There's no ISO cabs, there's no offstage cabs, it's just kind of loud behind me. And the front of house guy's just gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah. That's cool, that's great that it's kind of like such a simple setup now.
It's always evolving. At times it's been really complicated, and one aspect that makes it a little bit more complicated is pedal switching when you have different mic positions, and we've got like the ego ramp, and there's sometimes wings at the side of the stage, and you're not going to be able to run and change your pedals. So we have a kind of digital pedal set up with the analog pedals are back in a rack, and it just gives you a kind of nice switching system.
So what are you using on the floor at the moment? I'll come back to a couple of other amp questions later, but as we're on that subject, what are you using on the floor? Because traditionally, you've almost used a lot of Boss stuff. That was always kind of a good, like, simple,
It's like what I was saying before, that was such an integral part of my sound on the first few records that trying to recreate that live, it's really hard to find another pedal that that has the same tone.
Was it the yellow Boss?
It's the yellow one with the so much fizz up here, you know. But it almost sounds like a guitar on top of the bass, which I really like.
It was kind of like that was bass tone between 1990 and 2005.
That's it. It just has that real fuzzy face to it. And I think being a three-piece at times where I'm playing off the guitar and Simon and I are
especially against the Strat with single coils, you're doing a lot of like filling out the fundamentals.
Lots of times I'm in my lane, I'm playing the bass, I'm doing the supportive role, but then when we're trading off each other, I need to be able to match that sort of the presence and the tone of a single coil Strat, you know. So that was really my main distortion for years, and it still got to kind of be there for really key moments. The switching unit is a gig rig. Right. That's what we use.
Great. Yeah, they're so good. Such a fantastic unit to be able to link up to other things.
It's bulletproof. Yeah. One thing I really liked is being able to dial back, attenuate some of the pedals on the gig rig itself.
Via MIDI, yeah.
Yeah, rather than mess too much with the settings on the pedal, because it depends. Your gain structure is so important. You know, it depends where your gain is coming from. I've always found that. We did use a liquid foot setup before, which was really good. The capabilities were brilliant. I found it occasionally temperamental. Right. Didn't really like sweat too much, and that was a bit of an issue. Yeah, so the gig rig is just really rock solid.
They're bulletproof, and they're such a fantastic and brilliantly made and a great company as well.
That's it. So we also had the Boss Octave pedal.
Oh really? Yeah. Which were the OC3?
Yep, that's right, little brown one.
Yeah, because they had the OC2 is the one that ran through the 80s, which is the famous one. The OC3 kind of gets some people love it, or people hate it. The OC5's just come out now.
Okay, I'm not across that one, but I use it mostly as a drive.
Really? Because it's got the Octave drive function on it.
Yes, I don't really use. It doesn't have a lower octave at all the way I use it. Right. I have another pedal to do a lower octave should I need it. I just like the way it breaks up. It breaks the bass up. It just makes it slightly muddy, and that is not a word I would usually like to use when describing a nice tone. You know, muddy is not usually what you're going for, but it just takes that face off the bass. So for moments where I just want a little less attack, I want to reserve something for a kick in later on, perhaps. That's a really great pedal. Another go-to one is a colour sound tone bender.
Really? You're using a colour sound, a proper colour sound tone bender?
I don't know how proper it is.
Well, how much did you pay for it?
I didn't actually pay anything, and therein lies the rub. It was on our second ever tour, and our front of house guy at the time, Dave Lamb, bless him, he had it. I don't know where it came from. It come from a friend. It was all beat up. He said, "Have a shot at this." I loved the tone.
I can't believe you used that. That's fantastic.
So fuzzy. Yeah. And I took it. First time we ever went to America, I took it with us. It got damaged in transit, and I tried to solder it all back together, staying at the Riot House in Sunset Boulevard. I went down to the local Radio Shack and bought a soldering iron and a capacitor, and I more or less destroyed this pedal.
Oh my God.
I nearly burnt down the Riot House Hotel, but it's never been the same since. So don't try and fix your own pedals, kids. I guess that's the lesson. It wasn't until years later that I realised that this was quite an iconic pedal.
Yeah, it's pretty important.
And probably worth quite a lot of money.
I love that you just bought a capacitor as if
I literally went into Radio Shack and was like, "Have you got something that looks like that?" I was quite keen, perhaps a little bit too keen. I've never been able to replace that.
No.
You know?
They tend to not have an awful lot of low end, like a really lovely fuzzy sound, but you'd have to split your signal to use it for bass.
That's the balance with using distortion, I find, for the bass is losing bottom end. As soon as you get that waspy, buzzy bit up here, your ears hear that, and you stop hearing this bit down here.
And it's so important for you, especially in a three-piece. You've always got to be dealing with those fundamental. Like you can't rely on, sort of a,
There are some times where I want to lose all this down here, and I want to go up here and be like a little wasp. Yeah. But not for a big chorus and a big rock song. You still need to have that bit that joins with the kick drum.
Yeah.
You know, that was something I learned working with Garth Richardson when we started working on the songs. He would stand with his foot resting against Ben's kick drum and be staring at my right hand, and he tried to get that relationship between what I was doing with my right hand and what Ben was doing with his right foot, and it just created this marriage where it gives you a power in the bottom end, like I said before, about creating that foundation for the band to live on top.
Yeah.
That was always so important. So that bottom end in the bass, that's the bit that speaks to the kick drum. Sure. So you've always got to have that. So splitting the signal was a great way to do that. And that was the great thing about the DI that we got out of the Ashdown head. It was so clean. It was so warm. It was so opposite to that scuzzy, dirty thing that I also wanted to have. And it's those marriage of the two things that are really important part of my sound, I would say.